Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me carefully. Your emotions are the steering wheel of your life. They decide where you go, how far you go, and how fast you get there. But here's the truth most people never realize. You are not your emotions. You are the master of them. Think about it. How many times have you let anger ruin a moment that could have been beautiful? How many times have you allowed fear to hold you back from taking the leap you knew you were born to take? How many times has sadness chained you down when deep down you knew you had the strength to rise? Your emotions are powerful, but they are not the driver. You are. And until you take that wheel back into your hands, you'll keep spinning in circles, living by reaction instead of creation. So how do you control your emotions? Let me break it down. Step 1, change your state, change your emotion. Physiology drives psychology. You can't sit slouched over shallow breathing, staring at the floor and expect to feel confident. Stand tall, breathe deep, move your body with energy. Watch how quickly your emotions shift. Your body is the fastest switch to your mind. Step 2, interrupt the pattern. When you feel anger boiling, when fear creeps in, when anxiety tries to take over, you must break the cycle immediately. Clap your hands, shout a word of power, jump, laugh, do something unpredictable. The brain gets addicted to emotional patterns, and unless you shatter them, they will control you. Step 3, decide what emotion serves you. You don't just feel emotions, you choose them. Ask yourself, does anger serve me right now? Does fear move me forward? Or would courage, love, or determination serve me better? You always have a choice, but most people never stop to ask the question. Step 4, condition the emotions you want. Gratitude, joy, passion, courage. Don't wait for them to show up. Train them like a muscle. Every morning, put yourself in a state of gratitude. Every challenge, practice courage. Every failure, find the lesson and celebrate growth. What you condition daily becomes who you are. And here's the final truth. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. It doesn't mean pretending you don't feel hurt or scared or angry. It means acknowledging the emotion, taking the lesson, and then choosing to step into a higher one, because you are not meant to be a prisoner of your emotions. You were born to be the master of them. So from today, make a decision. No more living by reaction. No more being a victim of moods, of circumstances, of old stories. Take the wheel back, drive your life, choose your emotions, control your state, and watch as you create the results, the relationships, and the life you've always known you were capable of living. Because when you control your emotions, you control your destiny. When you hear the words, change your state, change your emotion. It might sound simple, almost too simple, but the truth is that every emotion you feel is directly tied to the state your body is in. Your physiology and psychology are linked so deeply that one cannot exist without the other. And most people are completely unaware of how much control they truly have over this connection. Think about it for a moment. When someone is depressed, what does their body look like? Their shoulders slump forward, their breathing is shallow, their voice is low, their movements are slow, their eyes drop to the ground. Their entire physiology reflects the emotion they are experiencing, and in that state, they cannot possibly feel joy. They cannot possibly feel empowered because their body is literally signaling their brain to stay in the loop of sadness or hopelessness. On the other hand, when someone is confident, when someone feels unstoppable, notice how they stand. Their chest is open, their back is straight, their eyes are locked in, their breathing is strong and full, their voice has power. That physiology sends a message to the brain that says, I am in control, I am ready, I am alive, and instantly the emotion follows. You see, we often think emotions just happen to us, but most of the time they are the result of the state we put ourselves in unconsciously. The power lies in the fact that you can flip that switch anytime you choose. The fastest way to change how you feel is not to sit around hoping that your mind changes, but to move your body differently, to alter your breathing, your posture, your tone. It is impossible to maintain a negative emotional pattern if you radically shift your physiology. If you doubt this, try standing up right now, take a deep breath that fills your lungs, stretch your arms wide as if you are embracing victory, put a huge smile on your face, even if you don't feel like it, and hold it for a minute. Your brain cannot ignore the message. You will feel a shift because the body is a machine that communicates with the mind in real time, and when you change your state, you override the emotional pattern you were stuck in. People often say, I can't control my emotions, they just happen. But what they don't realize is that they've been controlling their emotions all along through the state they allow themselves to stay in. If every morning you wake up, slump out of bed, drag your feet, breathe shallow, and start complaining, you are putting yourself in the state that produces frustration, anxiety, and stress. But if every morning you jump out of bed, take 3 deep breaths, Move with energy. Say out loud something that empowers you. You are putting yourself in a state that produces confidence, gratitude, and focus. It's not about pretending, it's about conditioning. Just like an athlete trains their body to perform, you can train your state to deliver the emotions you want on demand. Think about a time you felt unstoppable. Maybe you achieved something big. Maybe you stood up for yourself. Maybe you overcame a fear. In that moment, what was your state? Were you hunched over and timid? Or were you breathing with power, standing tall, moving with energy? The state you were in created the emotion of courage, confidence, certainty. The beauty is you don't have to wait for those rare moments. You can trigger that state every single day by taking control of your physiology first. Emotions are not accidents, they are responses, and those responses can be managed when you master your state. Have you ever noticed how music can change your emotions instantly? One song comes on and suddenly you feel energized, alive, ready to move. Another song comes on and suddenly you feel reflective, calm, maybe even emotional. That's because music shifts your state, and your state shifts your emotion. The same is true with movement. That's why exercise can completely alter your mood, why dancing can turn sadness into joy, why laughter can dissolve anger in seconds. Your state is the foundation, and when you learn to master it, you become the one who decides what emotions stay and what emotions go. The difference between people who live empowered lives and those who stay stuck often comes down to this one thing. They know how to change their state on command. They don't wait for circumstances to shift. They don't wait for someone else to make them feel better. They don't rely on chance. They use their body as a tool to direct their mind. That's why leaders walk with presence, why peak performers prepare with rituals before they go on stage or into competition. They understand that if they don't take charge of their state, the environment will. And when the environment dictates your emotions, you are no longer in control of your destiny. So if you want to control your emotions, start with your body. Breathe like someone who is alive. Move like someone who is powerful. Stand like someone who owns the room. Speak like someone who knows their worth. Condition that state every single day until it becomes natural. Because the truth is, the quality of your life is not determined by the events around you, but by the emotions you consistently live in. And those emotions come directly from the state you decide to live in. When we talk about interrupting negative patterns immediately, we are talking about taking control of the moment your mind begins to spiral into an emotion that does not serve you. Every human being has emotional patterns. Some people get angry the second someone cuts them off in traffic. Others go straight into worry the moment they don't hear back from someone. Some slip into sadness when things don't go as planned. These patterns feel automatic, but they are not unchangeable. They are simply habits that have been conditioned over time, and just like any habit, they can be interrupted and replaced with something stronger, more empowering, more useful. The problem is that most people allow the pattern to run its course. They feel anger building and they let it consume them. They feel fear rising and they sit in it until it paralyzes them. They feel doubt creeping in and they let it rob them of their courage. The key is to catch the pattern as it begins and break it with intensity before it takes root. Imagine your brain like a record player. The needle starts running on a track of anger or fear or sadness, and if you don't touch it, it will play out the same way every single time. To stop it, you have to scratch the record, interrupt the song, and force your mind to switch tracks. That is what breaking the pattern means. It's not about ignoring your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about refusing to let a destructive loop hijack your state. The faster you interrupt it, the less power it has. If you wait until you are fully immersed in anger, you'll explode. If you wait until fear has built up, you'll freeze. But if you step in early, if you change the pattern in its first moments, you regain control of your emotions and your destiny. So how do you do it? You use shock, you use disruption, you use something that snaps your mind out of autopilot. You can clap your hands loudly, shout a powerful word, move your body in a completely different way. Start laughing, start jumping, start dancing, start doing something your brain doesn't expect. Because the brain gets addicted to emotional patterns, it needs something powerful to shake it out of its groove. That's why humor works so well to dissolve tension. That's why a sudden movement can break someone out of anxiety. That's why reframing a situation in an instant can transform fear into excitement. The interruption doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to be decisive and filled with energy, because hesitation allows the negative pattern to continue building momentum. Think about someone who constantly loses their temper. If you let anger build, your heart rate spikes, your breathing becomes rapid, your voice rises, and before you know it, you've said or done something you regret. But if you recognize the very first signs of irritation and you instantly interrupt the pattern with something disruptive, like clapping, shouting, stop, laughing at yourself, even jumping up and down. You stop the emotion before it becomes destructive. You don't wait until the fire burns down the house. You put out the spark before it spreads. That is the essence of pattern interruption. It is proactive. It is decisive. And it is the only way to keep negative emotions from controlling your behavior. This is why rituals are so powerful. People who master their emotions don't wait until they are drowning in negativity to act. They create rituals that interrupt and replace negative patterns immediately. Athletes do this before competition. Speakers do this before stepping on stage. Leaders do this before making decisions under pressure. They train themselves to recognize the start of a negative loop and break it with speed and intensity. If you practice this enough, it becomes automatic, and suddenly you find yourself no longer chained to old habits of anger, fear, or sadness. You become the kind of person who feels the trigger, but instead of falling into the same pit, you rise above it with a new choice. You may have experienced moments like this without even realizing it. Have you ever been angry at someone and then suddenly they did something so ridiculous, so unexpected that you couldn't help but laugh? That laugh shattered the pattern of anger instantly. Or maybe you were nervous about something until a friend distracted you with a joke and suddenly your fear was gone. Or maybe you were sad until music came on that forced you to move and suddenly you felt alive again. Those are natural examples of pattern interruption. The difference is that once you become aware of this power, you don't have to wait for chance or for someone else to help. You can create the interruption yourself anytime, anywhere, and take control of your emotions on demand. The truth is, emotions are energy in motion. When you feel fear, anger, sadness, or doubt, what you are really feeling is energy directed in a certain pattern. By breaking that pattern, you redirect the energy into something more useful. Instead of fear holding you back, you can turn it into focus. Instead of anger destroying your connection, you can turn it into passion. Instead of sadness pulling you down, you can turn it into reflection and gratitude. But this only happens if you interrupt the negative loop before it consumes you. If you let it runs you. If you stop it, you run it. The greatest leaders, the greatest performers, the people who seem unshakable are not people who never feel negative emotions. They feel them like everyone else, but they have trained themselves to break patterns faster than anyone else. They don't let anger turn into rage. They don't let fear turn into paralysis. They don't let sadness turn into despair. They step in immediately, disrupt the loop, and redirect their state into something that serves them. This is not magic, it's mastery, and mastery comes from practice. The more you interrupt, the more you build the muscle of emotional control. And eventually, instead of being a prisoner of old patterns, you become the architect of new ones. You stop reacting to life, and you start creating it with intention, with power, with clarity. Choosing emotions that serve your goals is one of the most powerful decisions you can ever make in your life, because every single day you are faced with moments where an emotion is going to rise, and in that moment you have the ability to decide whether to feed it or to shift it. Most people live their lives as if emotions are weather conditions. If anger shows up, they accept it. If fear shows up, they accept it. If worry or doubt or sadness comes knocking, they let it in, they let it sit down, they let it take over. But the truth is that emotions are choices, and while the trigger might be automatic, your response never has to be. The difference between people who stay stuck and those who break through to higher levels of success and fulfillment is not that they never feel negative emotions. It's that they consistently choose the ones that push them forward instead of the ones that hold them back. Imagine you are preparing to take a big step in your life, maybe starting a business, speaking in front of a crowd, or pursuing a relationship you care about. In that moment, fear is likely to rise because fear is a protective mechanism. It's your brain saying, what if I fail? What if I get hurt? What if I embarrass myself? If you let that fear sit in the driver's seat, you will hesitate, procrastinate, or walk away completely. But in the same moment, you have the ability to ask a different question. What emotion would serve me right now? Would courage serve me better? Would determination serve me better? Would focus serve me better? The instant you ask that question, you create space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies your freedom. Because the truth is, fear doesn't serve your goal of growing. Courage does. Doubt doesn't serve your goal of taking action. Confidence does. Anger doesn't serve your goal of building relationships. Patience or compassion does. The emotions that serve you are always available, but you have to choose them consciously. One of the greatest illusions people live with is the belief that they don't control their emotions, that they are simply victims of whatever shows up in their body and mind. But think about it. Have you ever been upset about something? Maybe you were angry or frustrated, And then the phone rang and suddenly you had to shift your voice, shift your energy because it was someone important. In a split second, you changed your emotion. Or maybe you were stressed and then a friend walked in with a funny story and you started laughing. That wasn't an accident. That was you proving that emotions can be shifted instantly. The real question is whether you will do it by choice or wait for circumstance to do it for you. When you learn to choose emotions that serve your goals, you stop waiting for life to dictate how you feel, and you start deciding how you will show up regardless of life. Every goal you set, every dream you have, requires a certain emotional fuel. If your goal is to build a business, the emotions that will serve you are resilience, creativity, focus, confidence. If your goal is to build a loving relationship, the emotions that will serve you are patience, joy, gratitude, love. If your goal is to improve your health, the emotions that will serve you are discipline, energy, excitement, pride. You already know the recipe. The only question is whether you are feeding yourself with the right ingredients or poisoning yourself with the wrong ones. Because if you choose frustration, laziness, doubt, or fear repeatedly, your actions will reflect that, and so will your results. But if you choose excitement, gratitude, determination, and passion, your actions will reflect that too, and the outcomes will be entirely different. Think about a moment in your life when you felt unstoppable, when you achieved something that others thought was impossible. What emotions were you living in during that time? Maybe it was certainty, maybe it was passion, maybe it was determination. That emotional fuel is what carried you through obstacles, through late nights, through setbacks. If you had chosen doubt or frustration in those moments, you would have quit. But you didn't. You chose emotions that served the outcome you wanted, and that is why you won. The truth is you don't need to wait for special moments to feel those emotions again. You can summon them daily, you can live in them intentionally, and when you do, your life takes on a completely different quality. The mistake most people make is they confuse authenticity with indulgence. They think if they feel angry, they have to stay angry, otherwise they are not being real. They think if they feel fear, they have to stay fearful, otherwise they are lying to themselves. But authenticity doesn't mean indulging in every emotion that passes through you. Authenticity means choosing the emotions that align with who you really are and where you really want to go. It means being honest about what you feel, but also powerful enough to redirect yourself into what serves you. You can acknowledge fear and still choose courage. You can acknowledge sadness and still choose gratitude. You can acknowledge anger and still choose patience. That is authenticity at its highest level, because it is not about denying emotions. It is about mastering them. Every great leader, every great creator, every great human being who has transformed their life has mastered this art. They don't pretend they don't feel fear. They just refuse to feed it. They don't pretend they don't feel doubt. They just replace it with belief. They don't pretend they don't feel frustration. They just use it as fuel to create change instead of destruction. And that is the path available to you. You can wake up every day and ask yourself, what emotions will serve me today? If I want progress, I need determination. If I want connection, I need compassion. If I want growth, I need courage. If I want joy, I need gratitude. You become the chooser, not the prisoner. And when that shift happens, you take back control of your life in ways you never thought possible. It is not about perfection, because emotions will rise, triggers will appear, circumstances will test you. It is about practice, about building the habit of asking the right question, about conditioning yourself to lean into empowering emotions over and over again until it becomes second nature. When something goes wrong, your old habit may have been frustration, but your new habit becomes curiosity. When someone lets you down, your old habit may have been anger, but your new habit becomes patience. When life scares you, your old habit may have been paralysis, but your new habit becomes courage. That's how transformation happens. Not by never feeling negative emotions, but by refusing to let them stay longer than they should and choosing instead the emotions that serve your vision. Conditioning empowering emotions daily is the practice that separates those who live with consistency, joy, and resilience from those who feel like life is a roller coaster they can't control. Every single day you are conditioning something. The problem is that most people are unconsciously conditioning fear, frustration, doubt, stress, and negativity simply because that is what they focus on. That is what they talk about. That is what they relive in their minds. If you wake up in the morning and immediately check your phone, scroll through news that triggers anxiety, compare yourself to others on social media, complain about your problems, you are conditioning your nervous system to associate the start of your day with stress, pressure, and inadequacy. Then you wonder why you can't feel motivated, why you can't stay confident, why you can't find peace. It's not because those emotions are unavailable to you. It's because you haven't built them into habits, emotions, Like muscles grow stronger with repetition. If you want gratitude to be your default state, you can't just hope for it to appear when life is easy. You have to practice it when life is messy. If you want courage to guide your decisions, you can't just wait until fear disappears. You have to exercise courage, even in small moments, until it becomes who you are. Think about the emotions you want more of in your life. Maybe it's gratitude, maybe it's joy, maybe it's determination, maybe it's passion. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you intentionally conditioned that emotion, not just felt it by chance, but created it on purpose? For most people, the answer is rarely or never. But the people who live extraordinary lives have rituals that condition empowering emotions daily. They don't wait for a reason to feel grateful. They start their mornings listing what they are grateful for. They don't wait for motivation to show up. They create motivation by moving their bodies with intensity, by speaking words of power, by flooding their minds with visions of what they are building. They don't wait for love to be given. They give it freely, and in giving it, they condition themselves to live in it. They don't wait for confidence. They step into it daily by taking action, by celebrating small wins, by rehearsing victory in their minds over and over again until confidence is no longer something they do, but something they are. The truth is you can condition any emotion if you give it consistent repetition. Just like an athlete doesn't become strong by lifting weights once, you don't become naturally joyful by feeling happy once in a while. You become joyful because you practice joy every single day, even in small doses. You laugh more, you smile more, you find humor in challenges. You train your nervous system to associate daily life with positive energy. The same is true for gratitude. If every day you write down 3 things you're thankful for, and you don't just write them mechanically, but really feel them deeply, over time your brain rewires to focus on abundance instead of lack. That is how conditioning works. Where focus goes, energy flows, and what you practice consistently becomes automatic. Some people say they can't control how they feel because their circumstances are too hard. But that is backwards thinking. It is not circumstances that control your emotions. It is your emotions that control how you experience circumstances. 2 people can go through the same event. One sees it as the end. The other sees it as the beginning. One feels defeated. The other feels challenged. One collapses. The other grows stronger. The difference is not the event. It is the emotional conditioning. If your default emotion is doubt, every obstacle will confirm your fears. If your default emotion is courage, every obstacle will fuel your growth. If your default emotion is frustration, life will always feel unfair. If your default emotion is gratitude, life will always feel like a gift. Conditioning determines which path you take, not chance. This is why morning and evening routines are so critical. They are the bookends of your day, the moments when you can set the tone for everything that happens in between. If you wake up and condition gratitude, energy, focus, and love, you carry those emotions into every conversation, every challenge, every opportunity. If you go to bed and condition reflection, appreciation, and peace, you train your mind to rest in positivity and wake up stronger. Over weeks, months, and years, these small daily rituals add up to a life defined by emotional mastery instead of emotional chaos. Just like brushing your teeth keeps them clean, conditioning emotions daily keeps your mind clean, your heart strong, and your spirit resilient. Consider also the power of visualization and emotional conditioning. When you vividly imagine yourself succeeding, when you see yourself overcoming fear, when you rehearse yourself speaking with confidence, leading with strength, loving with openness, your brain does not fully distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It begins to wire those emotions into your nervous system as if you had already lived them. This is why athletes visualize victory before competing, why performers rehearse confidence before stepping on stage, why leaders prepare their state before making big decisions. They are not leaving their emotions to chance. They are conditioning them deliberately so that when the real moment arrives, their nervous system already knows how to respond. That is not luck. That is training, conditioning, empowering emotions. Also requires guarding what you allow into your mind and body. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, gossip, toxic media, or people who drain your energy, you are conditioning disempowering emotions without even realizing it. If you surround yourself with uplifting voices, inspiring content, empowering environments, you are conditioning positive emotions without extra effort. It is like a garden. Whatever you plant grows. If you let weeds take over, weeds will dominate. If you plant strong, healthy seeds and nurture them, they will flourish. Every thought, every habit, every influence you expose yourself to is a seed, and over time it becomes your emotional climate. The beauty of conditioning is that once you make it a lifestyle, it stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like who you are. At first, practicing gratitude, courage, or joy may feel forced, but repetition rewires your nervous system until it becomes automatic. Soon you wake up and feel grateful without trying. You face challenges and feel strong without hesitation. You walk into rooms and radiate energy without thinking. Just like someone who trains in the gym becomes naturally strong, someone who trains their emotions becomes naturally empowered. That is the secret to consistency. Most people rely on motivation that comes and goes, but those who condition empowering emotions daily don't wait for motivation. They generate it on command, acknowledging emotions, but mastering their direction is the key to true emotional power, because emotions are not the enemy. They are signals, they are messengers, they are energy in motion telling you something about the way you are perceiving the world. Too many people make the mistake of either denying their emotions or drowning in them. When they feel sadness, they suppress it and pretend it is not there, which only makes it grow stronger in the shadows. When they feel anger, they let it erupt unchecked, and it damages their relationships, their health, their opportunities. When they feel fear, they either ignore it until it sabotages them or surrender to it completely until they are paralyzed. The real path is not suppression and not indulgence. The real path is acknowledgement without attachment, noticing what you feel, listening to its signal, and then choosing where to direct that energy so it serves your highest goals instead of controlling you. Every emotion has a purpose if you understand it. Anger is a signal that one of your values has been violated, that something feels unfair or unjust. Fear is a signal that something matters deeply to you and that risk is involved. Sadness is a signal that you've experienced loss or meaning has shifted. Even frustration is a signal that you are bumping against a limit and growth is needed. The problem is not the existence of these emotions. The problem is when people mistake the signal for the destination. Anger does not mean you must destroy. Fear does not mean you must stop. Sadness does not mean you must stay broken. The emotion is a messenger, and once you receive the message, you have the choice to direct it. If you let anger sit uncontrolled, it becomes rage and destruction. But if you acknowledge anger and then direct it toward action, it becomes fuel for change, power for justice, strength for boundaries. If you let fear sit uncontrolled, it becomes paralysis. But if you acknowledge fear and then direct it toward preparation, learning, and courage, it becomes the very energy that sharpens you for the challenge. If you let sadness sit uncontrolled, it becomes despair. But if you acknowledge sadness and then direct it toward gratitude for what was, love for what still is, and vision for what can be, it becomes the seed of healing and wisdom. This is what mastering the direction of your emotions means. It means you do not reject them and you do not obey them blindly. You thank them for the message and then you tell them where to go. You remain the driver, not the passenger. This is why some people go through tragedy and emerge with strength, compassion, and clarity, while others go through the same experience and collapse into bitterness. The event does not decide. The emotion does not decide. The direction you give to that emotion decides. The same fire that burns down a house can also cook a meal. The same wind that destroys a ship can also carry it across the ocean. Energy itself is neutral until it is directed, and emotions are simply energy in motion waiting for your command. One of the most important practices is to name the emotion honestly. When you feel something strong, instead of saying, "I'm fine," or letting it overwhelm you, pause and give it a name. I feel frustrated. I feel scared. I feel uncertain. I feel sad. The act of naming the emotion takes you out of identification with it. You are no longer the emotion. You are the observer of the emotion. This alone creates space between you and it, and in that space is the power to choose what comes next. Once you've acknowledged it, you can ask yourself the next critical question. What do I want to do with this energy? That question turns the emotion into a tool instead of a trap. Take fear as an example. Everyone feels fear. The difference is that some people let fear stop them while others use fear as a compass. If fear shows up when you think about starting a business, speaking in public, or having a difficult conversation, it means the thing matters. Instead of interpreting fear as a stop sign, you can interpret it as a signpost pointing you toward growth. By acknowledging it and then redirecting it, you turn fear into focus and courage. The same with anger. If someone disrespects you and anger rises, you could explode and damage the relationship, or you could acknowledge it, breathe, and then channel that energy into setting a clear boundary or into fueling the determination to raise your standards. Sadness, too, when acknowledged and redirected, can lead to greater depth, empathy, and appreciation for life. It can make you more compassionate toward others and more grateful for what you still have. This is why emotional mastery is not about coldness or indifference. It is not about pretending you don't feel. It is about feeling fully, but then deciding consciously what direction those feelings take you. You can feel deeply without being enslaved. You can allow emotions to pass through you without letting them control your choices. You can turn every emotion, even the difficult ones, into an ally if you understand its message and direct its energy wisely. People who master this are not those who never feel pain. They are those who transform pain into power, who turn loss into perspective, who turn fear into courage, who turn frustration into innovation. They live in the same world as everyone else, but they use their emotions differently. And because of that, they create different results. Training yourself to master the direction of emotions requires practice. It requires awareness, so you catch the emotion before it controls you. It requires reflection, so you ask yourself what the message is. And it requires decision, so you tell the emotion where to go instead of letting it drag you somewhere you don't want to be. At first, it might feel difficult. You may notice yourself still reacting automatically, still falling into old patterns. But with practice, you will get faster. You will catch yourself in the moment, redirect, and regain control. Over time, this becomes natural. Instead of being someone who erupts in anger, you become someone who channels anger into power. Instead of being someone who freezes in fear, you become someone who steps forward with courage. Instead of being someone who collapses in sadness, you become someone who finds gratitude in the darkest times. This is the highest level of emotional intelligence, the level where you realize emotions are not meant to dominate you. They are meant to inform you. They are not curses. They are signals. But only if you remain the master of their direction. Otherwise, they can become chains. The difference is in the moment you pause, acknowledge, breathe, and choose. That is where freedom is built. That is where leadership is forged. That is where true strength is found. Because in the end, the measure of your life will not be whether you felt emotions, but whether you directed them in ways that created growth, love, and impact for yourself and the people around you.